Hello, writers. Have you ever bought a writing craft book someone says you just have to read?
Is it still sitting on your shelf? Have you even cracked the spine?
That's totally me.
Don't ask Renee how many craft books she owns.
Why do we keep buying these books we never read?
We all want to improve as writers, but that's hard to do alone.
That's why we started the Words to Write By podcast, to tackle these books together, chapter by chapter, and learn from their advice.
Or not. Sometimes they're wrong.
Hi, I'm Renee Nelson, former college writing instructor turned full-time writer and podcaster. After many years, I finally have a complete draft of my memoir.
And I'm Kim Smigado, author of the humorous fantasy novel Our Comeback Tour is Slaying Monsters, which is the first book in the Boy Bands and Dragons series, released by Riverfolk Publishing.
And now, on with the podcast. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Welcome to another episode of Words to Write By.
We are reading Julia Cameron's The Artist Way book, and we are on week 8. That's over halfway done.
Woohoo! Yeah! We're going to barrel through this book. We are on the treadmill of podcasting right now.
We are going to finish with The Artist Way.
Heck yeah.
Walk away. I wrote what my rant was going to be at the start of this. And here's my rant for this week, which is there are two things. The big one is that there is no focus in these sections. They just present some good points and then they just jump to something else, and there's no actionable items. It's just free consciousness. And there's some great things to talk about in that free consciousness, but there's no direction. And the second thing I'm going to argue about is that this book is wonderfully formatted. It's a really nice page layout. At each chapter, it has week 8 or whatever the number is, and then it kind of has a little summary of what this is going to do for you this week. And it says, this week tackles another major creative block, time. You will explore the ways in which you have used your perceptions of time to preclude taking creative risks. You will identify immediate and practical changes you can make in your current life. You will excavate the early conditioning that may have encouraged you to settle for far less than your desired creativity. There is no actual suggestions that fit these things. I mean, I think the idea is that you're supposed to read this book and discover them all on your own and then put them into play. Here's an idea to manage your time. Here's a system to get yourself to do work every day. Nothing like that. Anyway, those are my 2 rants.
If I put on my composition college teacher hat from English 1A, I would say this summary gets a C.
ChatGPT could do better.
Yes, it could. Actually, that would be a really good activity if we had like a PDF of this chapter to upload it into AI and see what ChatGPT would give it, because this summary must be for a different chapter. This summary doesn't make any sense because this is not what it's about.
No, it is not.
So don't trust the summary. The summary is a lie.
Cliff Notes version of this, and you're trying to tell someone you read this chapter by summarizing the summary, they're not going to buy it.
No. She needs to work on her summary skills. Let's just say that. Well, I want to address your rant first, because you had to start with the rant.
Yes.
You said these aren't really essays. They have low focus.
They're not actionable in any way. Just stream of consciousness all the way through.
Do you think there is any part of this book that isn't a stream of consciousness?
Maybe the very beginning parts had a bit more focus, but by this point, we're just going paragraph by paragraph. I will say that paragraph by paragraph, this is one heck of a chapter. Like, we often read these books, and as you get to the end where like less and less people are reading them, the authors kind of just do what they want to do, and there are some real gems, and this chapter gets into the heart of who Julia Cameron is and who she hates.
So I felt it because I'm a teacher. She should rename this chapter. It shouldn't be recovering a sense of strength. It should be recovering a sense of teacher bashing. Let's bash all the teachers because they're evil and they've done us wrong and they made us look dumb. Like, that's what this is. At least that's my rant in the beginning. Yeah. Precluding, before we even get into it, there will be a lot of teacher bashing. And if you are a teacher, you know that there's an unfair amount of blame that gets placed on you. It's not your fault.
Yes.
Well, some of it might be, but not to the extent that the government says or that teachers, parents.
I would say if I was renaming this chapter, recovering your axe to grind, because man,
Ooh,
you should have
good
an
word.
axe to grind.
Yeah, that's a better title.
So let's-
Recovering an axe to grind. Oh, I love it.
yes. The first section is called survival, and I would rename this criticism, or what to do with criticism, except that it doesn't actually tell us what to do with criticism.
Right. So she says all artists must learn the art of surviving loss. Loss of hope, loss of face, loss of money, loss of self-beliefs. They are the hazards of the road, and in many ways, it's signposts. We must acknowledge it and share it because artistic losses are seldom openly acknowledged or mourned. They become the artistic scar that blocks artistic growth.
I mean, like I said, this could be a really good chapter just by itself.
I've never heard anybody talk about mourning and grieving from like these artistic wounds before. They always say, oh, just suck it in and just move on. They always say, oh, you just have to have a thick skin as a creative person. But the idea of treating it like trauma is that's kind of what she's implying, like using it as kind of a way that people would go through trauma and like have to live through it. And then like you have to like close the loop, don't not think about it. You have to like work through it. And then when you're on the other side of it, that's when you can actually start to heal. Otherwise, you're just reliving it over and over and over again. So I feel like that's what she's hinting at here. I like the quote itself, but she doesn't tell you how to do any of it.
Right. Powerful art requires you go to a pretty deep spot inside of you. And sometimes it requires you to relive various traumas or to reinterpret things or to take certain risks. Yeah, there's going to be blowback. But never mind, because we're going to go on to the next thing.
Right. She says, we must remember that our artist is a child and that what we can handle intellectually far outstrips what we can handle emotionally. We must be alert to flag and mourn our losses. I relate to that. Intellectually, you can work your way, you know what you're supposed to be doing. You know that you should have a thick skin. You know that you shouldn't hold things just because somebody like says something bad. That could probably means more about them. Like you can rationalize all the reasons why you got a bad critique or why, an agent didn't call you back. All these things. But that actually doesn't help that much. I mean, it helps, but it doesn't heal you completely. Your reaction to it, your emotional reaction, like you have to deal with whatever happens, and how you are is like how you're reacting, and like you have to figure that out about yourself.
There are two parts here. There's when you create art and you present it to the world, there's all the stuff that will happen to that art. There's all the experiences you will have by presenting this part of yourself and getting people's reactions to it, good and bad and ugly. So that's one thing. But then there's also what we can handle intellectually far outstrips what we can handle emotionally. And that feels almost like the creation process. Sometimes you're going to pull stuff out that is really hard to deal with. So you could look at it either way. They're both very useful things. I think what you're talking about, the outside stuff, is actually probably the most practical because everybody that creates art has to deal with how other people interact with that art.
Right. This is one of the few chapters as annoying as it was in some ways, had the best quotes for me personally.
Oh, it had fantastic quotes. I like the criticism that damages an artist is the criticism, well-intentioned or ill, that contains no saving kernel of truth, yet has certain damning plausibility or an unsayable blanket judgment that cannot be rationally refuted. So honestly, someone can come to you and say your work is bad, and they can say why your work is bad. There's nothing you can do about it. That really hurts. And even if it's valid criticism, if you can't do anything with it, it can really be toxic.
Yes. She mentions later artists are dramatic people, and I wouldn't necessarily say that's wrong. In any field, you're going to have toxic people. The problem is if what she's saying is true, and I don't necessarily think it's wrong, they're not childish, like she said. They're sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
Other artists know this because they're artists, and some of the people use that to attack other people and be mean. And I've seen this. My MFA program was nasty. There was nasty people. I'm like, we are writing poetry. Can we just chill? Even my composition courses, we're learning as teachers to empower students. And there was bullying in my classroom among other students. There was a group of students bullying a new assistant professor. That was our teacher. And it was like, where am I? Is this high school? Like, and there wasn't enough done to make it end or stop. And these people know that those kinds of things wound other people because they're an artist themselves, or they're a writer themselves, or they're an academic themselves. They know what hurts them. And so they use that to be mean to others. And it's really hard because you have to kind of like protect your creative self. That's really hard to do when it's linked with criticism. Like, you need to get better. We want you to get better. Here's some critique. But sometimes you can't tell when it's toxic, and sometimes you can't tell if it's well intentioned. And then, like, sometimes even the well intentioned stuff, you can't accept it anymore.
You have to take risks as an artist. You have to show your work to other people. You have to get feedback and process that feedback, grow as an artist. But at every stage, you are exposing yourself. And like you said, you're in this MFA program to learn to write poetry, to get deep into your emotions, to experiment. You had people there that were basically actively attacking you, or actively attacking other people.
Yeah, it wasn't just me. It's like
Yeah.
other people. People dropped out. They even said, I didn't think this is really what it was going to be like. And it was so early in the program when one person dropped out and announced that during a class. I was like, oh no, don't go yet. Like, you don't know yet. Like, how do you know? Like, you could probably handle, but it was so damaging. She was like, I need to protect myself. I'm getting out of here. Like,
Yeah.
oh my God.
While this chapter brings up a lot of stuff, it doesn't actually tell you how to deal with it. We just jump to the next section called the Ivory Power. I wrote Julia Cameron's bad college experience.
That's what it felt like. Yeah.
Just to give you a feel for it. It has been my perilous privilege over the past decade to undertake teaching forays into the grooves of academia. What did you get out of this?
Being a student and also being a teacher. And being a creative person who went to academia to get better at being creative. And from this perspective, I will say that yes, you are right. She probably had a bad college experience. However, a lot of people hate teachers. A lot of people have deep rooted emotional trauma that they associate with a teacher or more. Teacher bashing goes even further into the government.
Let's back up here. This is teacher bashing. She very much subscribes to the idea that people in academia are thwarted creatives. So it's not just that they're a bad teacher, but that they could not be artistic. And so she feels they were then throwing their non-creativity onto the students they were supposed to be teaching.
And that they were jealous of their students.
Yeah, exactly. So she says, I am thinking particularly of a film department chair of my acquaintance, a gifted filmmaker who for many years had been unable or unwilling to expose himself to the rigors and disappointments of creating. Channeling his ferocious creative urges into the lives of his students, he alternately overly controlled and undercut their best endeavors, seeking to vicariously fulfill or justify his own position on the sidelines.
Yeah, talk about an axe to grind. I wonder if she got an F in that class. Dude, this is like the early version of Rate My Professor.
Yes.
People only really go on Rate My Professor if they want to complain about a teacher who failed them.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. She's got some deep-rooted issues. And for someone telling other people that they need to mourn these issues, she has not mourned it because she still has an axe to grind. I feel like if you truly mourned it, you would be able to like forgive the experience of both yourself and perhaps the person who did that to you.
Yeah. Well, she does say, I found myself unable to regard him without compassion, even though I'm eviscerating him in this section.
She definitely has an axe to grind. She was trying to name them without naming them. She was so deeply hurt by her experience in school, or still has an axe to grind, that she's willing in her book to name the person without naming them.
Yeah.
That's
totally.
that big deal. I mean, she's still got issues. She's still got like an emotional wound here.
Oh, this section goes on for a couple of pages too. And I get little arrows that say, this is true, and ooh, and wow, and question mark. It was just a real whirlwind of a section.
This is kind of a theme of her book. There's nothing really rooted in like real world application. She just says in this airy-fairy kind of way, oh, we have creative traumas, and here this one person hurt me. I'm not going to tell you exactly who they are and exactly how they did it. I'm just going to complain about it, right? She says, academia harbors a far more subtle and deadly foe to the creative spirit. Do you feel like any of your creative spirit as a writer or just a creative person was somehow wounded in school? Did academia do that to you?
If I look back, I can come up with a couple of teachers that weren't very good. But overall, and especially in my writing program, I felt like all the teachers were there to help us succeed.
You don't have any creative trauma.
No,
Wow, you are together. I must look like a wreck.
partly it's we just ended up in a really our year of the SciComm program was just a really supportive, wonderful group of people. And I mean, sometimes people might have not been thinking and said something thoughtless, but nothing that was intentionally thoughtless, and
Wow.
very rarely that. And our instructors specifically brought in professional journalists, and every one of them was like, well, here's how you can go about doing this, or here's this particular track you can do if this is where you want to go. Like, we were given every opportunity to be creative, to get our stuff out there, and to be nurtured in that program. And that was really, really hard and exhausting as well. And everyone had, ups and downs, and figure that pretty much every one of us had been to the director's office and cried on his couch. But, that was an intense program.
You're saying you have no creative wounds. You don't avoid working on your book because there's some like deep rooted psychological issue that you or trauma you've dealt with the past and your brain is trying to avoid that feeling.
Yep.
Your
It's
brain
all,
isn't trying to protect you
it,
from nothing.
no, it doesn't always come to the table to do creative stuff. And sometimes it gets easily distracted by bright, shiny objects. There are times where I just get like frustrated with what it's putting out and I don't even want to write. But those aren't traumas. Those are just like stupid brain stuff.
Okay, I've got another question for you. Okay, so is there anything like might be traumatic from that when you were a scientist? Was there any attacks? Was there any critique that you felt unfounded in your science and like when you were going to learn how to do lab stuff? Anything like that?
So we all hated the pre-med students because they were just there for the grades.
Okay.
But
Were they mean?
no, they weren't mean. I have always been a person who loved to learn, and the teachers adored me. Like, I even had a friend
Aw.
that had actually butted heads with a particular teacher. She had him again, and I was her friend, and we sat together in the class, and he got over it because people like me. Teachers love me.
Wow. Well, I love you, Kim, and I'm a teacher, so that might have something to do with it.
I like to learn, and teachers like students that like to learn.
That's awesome. I wish I could take your experience and put it in a little bottle and I would just like drink it. I would become addicted to that very quickly. I'd be
Mhm.
like, oh, I'm Kim now. Woohoo! Everything was great. There's some listeners who did not have that experience, and that sucks for them. But I'm very grateful somebody had a good one.
Yes.
So everybody knows it is exists and that we can make it happen and teachers can be good and supportive and they should be. But not everyone had that.
Okay, so let's break it down. There are a couple of different ways that you have a bad teacher, okay? There are teachers that just aren't very good at teaching for some reason. They're at the university for their research. This always has come easy to them, and they have a hard time communicating it to students that it doesn't come easy to.
Do an example.
Like math. If you think about people that teach math, especially math TAs,
Uh-huh.
classes, and you got the professor, and then you've got all these graduate students in mathematics that are thrown at teaching math, okay? And these are people who they were doing calculus on their own in high school. They never had a problem with looking at a geometry proof and saying, oh, this is how you do it. They just got it. And at some point in grad school, they got to the math where it's really hard and they didn't get it then. But they have a very hard time communicating to students that have issues with math and they just don't get it. And I think a similar happens to writing. People that don't really know the basics of writing sometimes have instructors that don't know how to teach if they're not specifically trained to teach.
Yes. I kind of wonder why people become teachers if they're really good at a subject. How would you teach it then? You're already really good at it. How can you tell people who aren't good at it to be good at it? To learn how to be good at it, you didn't have to do those strategies or any other strategies that you have to teach your students to do because you yourself didn't have to do very many of them because you were already good at it. That is a paradox. But I had to struggle a lot for even the stuff that I am now good at. So I felt
And
like I was a good teacher in that way.
you got teaching theory as
I
well.
did. I got a lot of teaching theory.
I think that's a kind of a subset there because that was the program you were in was training people to be
Hmm.
teachers. And especially like in the sciences or some of these other areas, you basically get thrown into teaching as just like a side effect. We need teachers to teach these classes, and you get to do your research.
I will just say that I was in a special program. San Francisco State had their integrated reading and writing program, and it was solid. I'm assuming a lot of schools do all of this stuff, but that at the time, and even before that, it was kind of rare. You didn't get it as much. People were thrown into classrooms. You just taught the way you remember being taught, and you just get thrown into a classroom. You just have to figure it out.
Yeah. So that's one category of bad teachers, people that just don't
It can
know
be, yeah.
how to teach their knowledge. There are toxic teachers that for some reason they don't like teaching, or they don't like students, or they're just bad news.
They're just jerks
Mm-hmm.
in a position of power. Yeah, that exists. Totally. I've seen that. Yeah.
The idealistic students are the ones that are going to be most damaged by that. I want to learn what you have to say. I really respect you as a teacher. Just here, I'm going to open myself up to you. And then they just stab you.
I had a teacher once who, in their syllabus, you would show up, you'd have a workshop. Everything that's workshopped is a draft. That's the reason you're getting it workshopped. And at the end, you turn in a portfolio of revised work based on the workshops that you had. Like, I get it workshopped, and then it completely transforms. Like, maybe the poem becomes like 3 more pages. Sometimes it gets super tiny. The topic might change. I need that workshop.
So the class is set up where you need to turn stuff in, but we're not going to grade anything you turn in because we know that that's a work in progress. And we'll wait till the very end, you show in your portfolio, and that's what we're going to grade you as.
And that is standard. I mean, I didn't even think about it. I'm like, yep, I'm in a poetry class like normal. But no, you got critiqued so hard. And in the end, the teacher said, oh, no, you don't have to turn in a portfolio. And that's what the syllabus said. I was like, oh, I see what you were doing. I could see what happened. And I learned from that experience. I was like, I need to be very careful in these classes because apparently some of these teachers, they're not playing a fair game here. So yeah, that was a little annoying. There's one other type of teacher. There is a bad teacher, but there is something even worse than a bad teacher, an incompetent teacher.
I think an incompetent teacher is worse than a
It's
teacher that's
it's
actually
a type of bad teacher that's so bad that they are incompetent. For example, there's this one dude, he taught this similar courses that I taught. He was so frustrated by developmental student learning. His solution was to give them a spelling test. And I specialize in developmental students. And I was just like, dude, you were in the wrong job. You either need to go back to school, you need to figure something out because that is not helping anybody. If that is the only solution he had for anything, I was afraid of what his grades maybe were as a student. I was like, how are you a teacher?
So what he instead of actually teaching them, he just gave them spelling tests every week.
He ended up getting not hired back. There's one person who was probably had been teaching for 40 years. ESL teacher, she taught reading, and she goes, I can't have students write journals because their writing is so bad that there's no point. And I was like, wait. Their writing is bad. Therefore, they need practice. Therefore, you're not going to give them any opportunity to practice their writing. My brain was like, what? And you've been doing this for 40 years?
You can talk about bad teachers all day long. You can
Right.
talk about bad experience all day long. The question is, what do you do about it? So basically, we got 2 different categories here, and then you have 3 categories. The first one is people that just that know their stuff, but just aren't very good at teaching. When you're in a class with somebody that you're just really struggling with the material, but they know their stuff and they're not actually like being mean, that's when you go to office hours. That's when you do your best to meet them halfway, ask for other resources in the department to go and use. I mean, you're in a situation where the class is not teaching you what you need to teach. And
Yeah.
sometimes because they're not good at teaching, but they know their stuff, at a certain point, you might actually break through and get access to the stuff that they know, and it might be useful. That's where you got to be positive. And then the mean teachers, like you had, or the people
Some of them, yeah.
you have to recognize this person is not doing you good. And that's where you have to protect yourself.
Right. And that's hard because they're in a position of power. She even mentioned it in her chapter. She talked about how teachers are a little bit like parents.
Mhm.
And then I'm like, there's a lot of vitriol, and some of it's deserved, but most of it isn't. Same with parents, right? We blame our parents for all sorts of shit. Is it all deserved? I don't know. A lot of people will have kids and go, oh, I guess my parents were doing the best they could, right? I think what is most useful for our listeners right now is the ones who have had some kind of creative trauma as students, because that's what Julia Cameron's coming from. If you have been treated poorly, you have low self-esteem, you have all these excuses why you won't go to write because your brain is trying to protect you from maybe some past trauma that you've had to deal with. Like, I think that's what she's alluding to. And I think that's a very real thing. I think it's very important that people figure something out so that they can. And I would like to know what that is, because I have my own creative issues that I'm having a hard time overcoming. And Julia Cameron does not tell us about any of them. She doesn't teach us anything. She doesn't tell us how to do it. There are zero strategies. Ah.
But yes, but there's a whole bunch of ranting. I need to quote a few of these here. The halls of academia, with their preference for lofty intellectual theorems, do little to support the life on the forest floor. Or, it would be my hope that academics who read this book and apply it would do so with an altered appreciation for authenticity of growth for the sake of growth.
She had some bad teachers, or she just got an axe to
She's
grind.
working it out. Okay, so there was another individual here that she talks about, this person, Ted. When Ted finished writing his first novel, he bravely sent it off to a literary agent. He also sent a check for $100 to pay the agent for taking the time and trouble to read it. Note, I wrote, this was not an agent. She should point out that anyone who's sending their stuff out to a literary agent and paying them, that's not the way the process works. She didn't say he hired an editor. He didn't say he hired a literary agent to give him feedback. She says he sent it to an agent and he paid them money. And if nothing else, the important message always in these things is if you are a writer and an agent says, I'm interested in your work, we can publish this, send me this amount of money and I'll send you feedback, then you don't go with that agent.
I mean, we don't mail stuff anymore, but if you did, you took your manuscript and you put $100 in it, like, that's a bribe.
It's not even
It's ridiculous.
It's predatory.
It's weird. It's creepy. I would have sent it all back and been like, I don't even want to deal with you, bro. Whoever you are, you're weird. This is not how the process works, and you clearly don't understand. And working with you would be a nightmare.
Because you read that this is how it works the artist way is not how it actually works.
Right. So please, dear listener, if you have this book and you're listening or you're reading it and then you're listening to us, please, 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 from experience, let us tell you, don't send $100 for taking the time and trouble to read it, because they'll laugh at you.
Anyway, so for his $100, he got a single page of unusable, irresponsible, and vague reactions. This novel is half good and half bad. That's the worst kind. I can't tell you how to fix it. I suggest pitching it out. This is actually her trying to work through examples for readers. This is a person that went out, got bad, hurtful advice about their manuscript. Her advice is, get a second opinion. If you run into a toxic teacher and they give you bad advice, you are allowed to ignore it and move on.
The problem is you're not. If your grade is attached, you have to do what they say.
Right. But I mean, yes, you have to sit through that class, but then you don't take from that teacher again if you're going to help it.
Right.
And you don't let their bad advice and their judgments guide you. You put up walls, you take another teacher. When you're looking at the criticism of your piece, it's very easy to focus on all the bad criticism because that's where you have to do the work. But you have to remember that there's a lot of good criticism too. There are a lot of people that actually like parts of the book. And if, say, you're really good at characters, but you're not good at plot, and so you're struggling with the plot and you're working the plot, go back and remember that people actually like your characters. Don't focus so much on the negative that you can't see the good in your work.
The best teacher I had in grad school was amazing. And you know what he did? He focused only on the good things, which you think that's not helpful, but it is, because he would talk about, oh yeah, I can see, how you're playing with language here. And then here's this grammatical, so he'll give examples and he'll be like, yeah, really, that made me think this. It put me in this mood. It was clear that you're referencing blah, blah, blah. So he's modeling it for everybody else. Like, look at this thing that this author did in the class. And also it's for you. It's like, do this more.
People shouldn't be afraid to pursue creative writing and creative programs because they're worried about mean students or mean teachers, because there are these other individuals in these programs that are amazing and wonderful. A graduate program in writing, an MFA program, often has these really wonderful teachers as well.
Right.
So maybe you have had a traumatic teacher and you need to get some stuff off your chest, come to our process groups. They are on Wednesdays, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. You go through Meetup or Zoom, and we get together with a bunch of other writers, and we just talk about stuff. And maybe we talk about some deep-rooted issues, or maybe we just complain about stuff, or maybe we talk about opportunities to publish. Part of getting yourself through these experiences is to talk to other writers.
Yeah. Many of them figured out a way to overcome it. Some of them have yet to, but they've had different experiences and everyone shares it at school. You can find it if you go to our website, words to write by podcast.com, and there's a banner. You just click on it, it'll take you to the meetup page, or you could just go to the meetup page, words to write by podcast process group. It's free, it's fun, it's an hour. See you there.
Okay, so let's leave academia behind and go to
Woohoo!
Cameron's other traumatic experience, which is what happened to that one film she wrote. See here, there are some wonderful bits in this chapter about exactly what happened. She's talking about how she wasn't getting anywhere and she was listening to conventional wisdom to tell her how to do it, and it wasn't working out. And so she said, I left Hollywood. I went to Chicago, bought a used camera, and using my Miami Vice writing money, shot my own feature, a romantic 40s style comedy. It was in the can for $31,000 and it looked good. And then incredibly, my sound tapes were stolen. I finished the film anyway, dubbing it in its entirety. So basically, we're talking about a student film that then lost the sound, and then she redubbed over the whole thing.
This wasn't a student film. She had been working for Miami Vice, like
Right,
writing scripts.
Right, I'm sorry. This wasn't, I'm saying a student level film. Basically, she did it independently, okay? And the result won foreign distribution and fine reviews abroad. And I learned a lot. As honest as she could be to say that it completely bombed in the United States, nobody liked it, and she went away with learning from the experience.
Okay, so I want to look up this movie again. Like, if you are now just joining us and you have not listened to our other episodes in the very beginning, very first episode talking about this book, we looked it up to try to find it. We could not find the movie, which I'm going to do right now. Cameron, Julia Cameron, IMDb. There she is. God's Will. It's from 1989. She is known for this movie. There is even a cover of this movie. A young girl has been left an orphan, but in the custody of her step parents. From the afterlife, her parents look out for her and don't like the treatment she is getting. That's kind of a neat plot. Can you
Although
find
it
this?
does not sound like a
No.
romantic 40s style comedy. Yeah. So basically, she writes in the artist way. Since 1974, I have worked vigorously and exhaustively as a film writer. I have written and sold features, short films, documentaries, docudramas, teleplays, movies of the week, and that bastardized movie, the miniseries. I have directed one feature and half a dozen short films. Less visibly, I have labored as a script doctor, credited and not, for hire and for love. So basically, she's claiming she's got this extensive experience, but she has no actual presence on the internet for her film and movie writing.
So I did a little bit more digging. I found her movie.
Okay.
You can watch it on Vimeo.
Okay.
It's, I believe, on her own website, juliacameronlive.com.
What's it
It's
called?
right here. It's called God's Will. And she said, the film you are about to see was made 40 years ago, has never been widely released. The sound for the film was stolen. The police were no help. I cut the film silent, reading lips, and then looped the film in its entirety. The looped film was accepted by the London Film Festival and the Munich Film Festival, where it garnered good reviews. They were accustomed to looped films. Not so back in America, where only a tiny distribution company was willing to take a gamble on a looped film. And so the film went unviewed until now. It is my hope that the looping will prove a marvel, not a detriment, and add to your enjoyment. What does she mean by looping?
I mean, she redubbed everything, I think.
Is that what looping means?
Must mean. Renee,
I don't know.
are we going to just get together and have a drinking night and watch this thing?
Fuck yeah, let's do it. Wine time, girl. We've come a long way since She-Ra. That's all I gotta say.
Anyway.
So she did give one strategy. Are we moving on to strategies? Is there any more you want to like?
No, I mean, this is just the point that this is somebody who was basically lambasting all these academics for not, not being artistic and not actually fulfilling their dreams and thwarting students. And she herself here basically has this chapter, this section that's all about like her thwarted dreams.
Right. So we're shooting all over Julie Cameron as usual, and a lot of it is warranted. However, I do believe she did give some very light strategies, which, if you maybe like made them your own and added to them, might be helpful. I thought so. I mean, I just want to throw her a bone here because I was like, okay, yeah, Julia Cameron, you go, girl. You've got some strategies here, sort of. One of them, she says, I learned when hit by loss to ask the right question. What next? Instead of why me? That could be very helpful, at least for myself. It's like, okay, what do I do now? What's the next thing I do for the book, for the screenplay, for whatever I'm doing? Not, why is everyone always shitting on me?
No, it's completely right. When you get a setback, the important thing is not to wallow in how well you spend a bit of time wallowing in how bad you feel. But the next step, or at some point, you have to say, okay, what do I have to do next for this project?
Right. She does mention the Latin quote in English is "Don't let the bastards get you down," which is also like have a tough skin. So that was a little annoying. She says this, which I thought was nice. Artists who take this to heart survive and often prevail. The key here is action. Pain that is not used profitably quickly solidifies into a laden heart, which makes any action difficult. So, not acting, not going back to work or going back to the desk or going back to your art. When you don't do that, it actually like makes the wound fester. One way to combat it is to keep showing up anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really good advice.
So I have a short story I've been trying to get published for a while, and it has just got a rejection for it the other day. And my take on it is whenever I get a rejection for that story, I immediately find someplace else to send it to, even if there's not much of a chance doing it. If nothing else, short stories usually take, at least a month or two before they get back to you, sometimes even longer. So you get it out of the way, you don't have to think about it. But I always act on rejection by trying to put something into another avenue for acceptance. And likewise, I've also found that when I'm not satisfied with a particular piece of writing, that I get my best results when I kind of address, well, what do I think is going wrong with this and move forward on that. It's the ability to take something that you're very passionate about and remove the artist hat and just go forward with more of an analytical, this is the next thing to do. Do you have any strategies for like when you did poetry? Did you also just resubmit it to something else when it was rejected?
Poetry, I have like the thickest skin. They beat it out of me. And for some reason, other stuff hurts me more. But like poetry's like, yeah, whatever. I know the game because I kept going forward. I told my students, it's like I had little blinders on like a horse, and you just keep going. Who cares? And in the end, it really just came down to numbers. I would submit to a bunch of literary magazines. And then when the rejection started coming in, I got excited because if I had done it enough that I was getting like 1 out of 10. So as the rejections piled, I got excited because I knew, oh, it's going to happen any minute. Someone's going to take it. And they did. Almost every poem I submitted accepted to some kind of magazine. What made me stop one was teaching. It just really sucked my soul out of my body. But two, also, I had a very hard time writing a book. Like, I know in grad school they were trying to get us like, you're writing a whole book. I had a really hard time like finding like a cohesive enough theme to get them together. So I could write really good poems, one-offs that were entertaining. People liked them, but I couldn't quite bring them together into a book, which is what you need to do and write a good manuscript in order to get the whole thing published. So that's the next step that I never quite took. And since my goals have changed since then.
But yeah, I think the one of the secret too is the whole business about being rejected for your work or getting criticism for your work is it hurts a lot at the beginning, but if you keep going at it, it gets easier. And it gets more like Renee at this point, and not me. Like if I get rejected from a story, I don't take it too personally because it's happened enough. That's just something you work through. And again, you just have to practice at it. You have to practice at getting rejected enough that it doesn't bother you anymore. You have to practice enough of people telling you they don't like this part aspect of your writing so that it doesn't bother you anymore. You can just work on what they say and have actionable items.
Yeah, but that's also the you have to grow a tough skin. Like that doesn't help with everybody.
You grow a tough skin by doing it again and again and realizing it's not the end of the world. It takes some time to build up, and it happens slowly. And as an artist, have those people that support you when something goes bad. Have someone you can call, talk up and rant about it. Have someone you can work through it, and just keep going and know that those rejections are going to make it easier in the future to keep at it. That's how you get just tough skin.
She says it in a different way, which I also think is useful. She says, when faced with a loss, immediately take one small action to support your artist. Even if all you are doing is buying a bunch of tulips and a sketch pad, your action says, I acknowledge you and your pain. I promise you a future worth having. Like a small child, our artist needs mommying. Ouch, that hurt. Here's a little treat, a lullaby, a promise. But she says action. Now, I wouldn't just like treat yourself all the time because then that becomes like all you do. Action begets action. I hate the word productivity, but like productivity or anything is a pendulum. The more you do it, the more you do it. And
Mhm.
this is very true for working out, like getting on the gym. If you're on the couch, it's so hard to get off the couch because the pendulum hasn't started moving.
So the next section is called Age and Time, Product and Process. And she's got this great thing at the beginning that says, question, do you know how old I'll be by the time I learn to play the piano? Answer, the same age you will be if you don't. And I love this quote. And she used it earlier in the book. And I loved it there too. But we are seriously recycling stuff at this point. I mean, we have addressed the whole don't have excuses, get out there and do stuff kind of thing. She has this quote here. Creativity occurs in the moment, and in the moment we are timeless. We discover that as we engage in a creative recovery, I felt like a kid, we may say after a satisfying artist date. Kids are not self-conscious, and once we are actually in the flow of our creativity, neither are we. So this is kind of a fallback. Were you self-conscious as a kid?
What do you mean by that?
Like I was always very aware of kind of how I was presenting as a kid.
Well, how old are we talking?
Have you ever felt like a kid when you're doing art? I guess that's
No. I don't like this whole inner child thing.
hmm
It's almost like the freedom of being an adult is pretty unmatched.
hmm
I was self-conscious as a kid in the sense that I was always regulating my behavior to please. At some point, I would like somehow lose myself and forget to do that. And then I would regret it because I would get too excited. I would get too happy. I would show a side of myself that people would make fun of. So I was always trying to suppress it.
Yeah,
Did you feel self-conscious as a kid?
I felt self-conscious as a kid.
Were you just worried about making sure everyone thought you were happy or you had
No,
to please people?
I think I was very aware of how I was presenting myself. This idea that you can just be this kid, you can just make art without any fear or worry about the consequences or how you're perceived. I don't know. I'm not buying it right now. I'm gonna say let's jump to the next section because I got a good axe to grind with this one too. Her idea here is well, how do you actually get stuff written? Her idea is you take small steps instead of skipping ahead to the large one, which you might not yet be prepared. She has you have a screenplay, so you break it down, you figure out what you have to write each day, and you work a bit every single day. And after a certain period of time, you have the entire screenplay. And my first part of the rant is that this is a useful approach, but it's harder to do if you're spending 30 minutes writing your morning pages that are just stuff that you throw out. And she's talking about writing a little bit every day. And this is similar to what we got in Anne Lamont's Bird by Bird. But Anne Lamont says, you know, you write a bit every day and you build that habit and you'll start discovering stuff that's coming out that you'll use from your writing. Whereas Cameron's that whole like you write 30 minutes or whatever, 3 pages, you throw it away, and then you start writing specific thing
Yeah.
to build up the entire project. Like she twists in a way that I think could be very frustrating. If you took your project and broke it down to small pieces and tried to write a bit every day and you weren't prepared to do it, I think it'd be very discouraging.
It could be. I feel like if you're looking into the psychology of the morning pages, they do kind of make sense. Because if your goal to combat any kind of like creative trauma is action,
hmm
that action requires you to sit down and start moving your pen. If you're a writer or an artist, whatever, it got you in the seat.
hmm
And since you're not trying to do anything, you're just writing and doing nothing, your brain doesn't create any kind of expectation or any kind of resistance because you don't want to do the thing, because whatever you're doing doesn't matter. You're going to throw it away anyway. It's a psychological thing to get your butt in the chair.
Right.
It's action inducing without any kind of mental hang-ups.
Yeah. Then to use from that to, break down your project and do a bit of it, all the way through and just
I've heard that advice before.
I've heard that advice too, but I think it goes against what she's been talking about in this book the entire time. She
How
says,
so?
indulging ourselves in a frantic fantasy of what life would be like if we were real artists, we fail to see the many small creative changes that we could make at this very moment. And yet she's going on about synchronicity and just like, quitting your job and jumping into it and doing all this stuff. And
Yeah.
you're thinking, well, maybe you shouldn't indulge in that fantasy, but just do a small amount of work every day, part time, till you get it done.
I have a hard time doing any of that. That's not kind of how I have worked in the past. It's how I'd like to work. I feel like in a perfect world, that's exactly what we would do. It's scientifically proven that breaking things down into smaller chunks and doing little things is better than trying to get it done at the last minute.
Right, but up until this point, she hasn't been talking about that way. And now suddenly she throws this in
Right.
at week 8. Like, it's all so random how you get stuff.
There's no preparation for like her topics. Like she just throws things out there, whatever. You just kind of have to go with it. I will say this, she mentions God only once in this entire chapter.
I had not even realized that, but
Yeah, that was nice because I wasn't as angry reading this. It's probably my favorite chapter because I haven't had to be angry. Anyway,
here's a good quote she has here in this section. Most block creatives have an active addiction to anxiety. We prefer the low grade pain and occasional heart stopping panic attacks to the drudgery of small and simple daily steps in the right direction. And granted, this book was written 40 years ago, but doesn't that sound like we get distracted with doom scrolling and social media? Like,
yeah,
we don't want to do the drudgery of the small steps. We need some sort of anxiety or some sort of hit. And we go to social media, the internet.
because of all the tools we have and the resources, you would think it'd be easier for artists now. In some ways, it is. But in some ways, the artists of the past and the way they work, they're probably watching a lot of Netflix now. They wouldn't have because there was no Netflix back then.
But I like that, the active addiction to anxiety.
If that has anything to do with being an artist, well, I fit that bill.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I get that. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Again, she doesn't tell us what to do about it. This whole chapter is about called filling the form, which is you're doing small steps to fill everything out. Then she has this bit here, interesting contrast to the Anne Lamont stuff. And I'm just going to read the beginning and the end, which is that she says, actors who get work are the actors who work, whether they are working or not. And she goes on to talk about this actor that she knows that is constantly like taking classes or doing like readings or just kind of like very involved in the acting community, even though she's not always getting work. So the quote is, the actors who get the work are the actors who work, whether they are working or not, which doesn't actually make much sense of it. What she's saying is that this actor that she respects is someone that doesn't always have a lot of paid work, but she's always working as an actor. She's always doing some kind of reading or taking a class or involved in some community event. And so she's always thinking of herself as a writer. And the line at the end says, work begets work. Small actions lead us to larger movements in our creative lives. And this is something that is useful. When I'm at my best writing, I'm always writing something. Even if I take time off from my main book project, I've got something else going on so that I'm actively thinking about stories and actively typing words from my head onto paper. Is that good advice, do you think?
I think her advice specifically is to do the work, just like sit and do work. I agree with that. The problem is, I used to have students who I would teach the process, I would teach the steps of writing that I wanted them to do. It cut out a lot of problems later if they did these steps. I told them that, and I told them they were required. And then they would turn their essay in, there would be no steps. I'd be like, why didn't you do it? Well, I didn't really need to do them. I go, just knowing how to do it, knowing that a strategy is out there and knowing what that strategy is and what it does is not the same as actually doing the strategy.
They mentioned that this woman takes classes, but it's not like classes she sits and just listens. Acting classes involve actually getting up and acting.
Well,
Just
there's
like writing,
homework and there's everything.
like listening to a podcast is different than taking a writing class. Because the
Okay,
writing class
yes.
is going to actually cause you to do the writing.
I would agree with that. I was coming from it's easy to tell yourself if you're just watching this movie, you're going to analyze the plot. And then 4 movies later, and
Right.
actually doing any work. That is a trap.
That's not the work. The work is sitting down and creating something every day, even if it's just fan fiction, even if it's just,
It's whatever.
it's not meaningless writing or it's not like just flow of consciousness. It's good to tackle some kind of writing every day. And it's easy to get out of that habit because, like you said, you're thinking about strategizing or you're thinking about setting something up to do later, or you're actively involved on a Discord community with writers and you're talking about writing. And it's not the same as writing.
Yeah. I don't know if there's anything more you wanted to say. I wanted to talk.
Oh, yes, I do.
Sure. What's the next thing you're so excited to tell us?
I want to talk about Theodore Rothke.
Rothka, I think his name
Yes.
is.
Mm-hmm. So she mentions at the end a poem by Theodore Rothke. And first of all, she writes that the phrases we learn by going / where we have to go. That implies that they're on 2 different stanzas, right? Or 2 different lines.
Yes.
Okay, so I looked at the poem and those words are always on the same line. I also looked up the poem. It's called The Waking. It won the Pulitzer Prize in 1954. I'm not sure if you've ever read this one in your poetry classes or this writer, poet.
I know this writer.
Okay. So yeah, I read the poem. I actually even listened to the author reading it aloud.
Oh, wonderful.
So the other line that is repeated, they call it a villanette or
Villanelle.
Yes. And I'm not sure what that particular type of poem is.
It's a form poem. You certain lines are repeated, and that's supposed to.
That's why she put it in the fill out the form, because it's a form poem. Because the other line that's repeated again is, I wake to sleep and take my waking slow. And the entire poem is about instinct and discovering stuff along the way and kind of just experiencing life. And it's not about filling out a form and doing a little bit of work every day.
Yeah.
So, like, she picks something as a reference because she likes the fact that it's part of a form poem, or because, she thinks that makes sense. We learn by going where we have to go. But she misquotes it, and it isn't actually the right poem. And
I don't know if she picked it because it was a form poem, but yes, if you take things out of context, if you take lines out of context, you read poems without the title, all those things. Yeah, a line could be cool and it could mean a lot of things, but it's nice to read the whole thing and actually see where it comes from. That's true with anything, right? I think what annoys me the most is people will read part of a poem for their wedding from a famous person. And that's when you read the whole poem and you go, oh, you probably shouldn't have picked that poem.
Okay, so then we got early patterning and exercise. Oh, I had fun with
Yes.
this.
Did you?
I did.
Oh, I'm very curious. Okay. So this is like an ad-libs where you fill in the form, right? She gives you sentences and you have to fill in the blanks.
Yeah, and they're very small blanks too. Like, it's not like free associate. There's some very specific kinds of things that she wants you to respond in this thing.
Right. She says, write about whatever they trigger for you, they meaning the sentences. Okay, so get started. Number 1.
First one is, as a kid, my dad thought my art was blank. That made me feel blank. I was looking at this and saying, there is no way I'm going through this. And I thought, what if, as opposed to writing it for myself, I just imagined a person and filled it out?
It's a cool character.
So, yes, I've got an entire little story here.
Nice. Okay, tell us the story then. You go for it.
As a kid, my dad thought my art was cute, and that made me feel my creative side was trivial. I remember one time when he skipped one of my piano concerts to watch my brothers play a baseball game. I felt small and insignificant about that. I never forgot it. As a kid, my mother taught me that my daydreaming was wasting my time. I remember she'd tell me to snap out of it by reminding me no boy wants a girl who reads. The person I remember who believed in me was my Aunt Julia Cameron.
Sorry. Okay.
I remember one time she encouraged me to play hooky and went to the amusement park. I felt transgressive and happy about that. I never forgot it. The thing that ruined my chance to be an artist was getting pregnant my second year in art school.
Oh, snap.
The negative lesson I got from that, which wasn't logical, but I still believe, is that I can't be a mother and be an artist. When I was little, I learned that questioning authority and wearing white after Labor Day were very big sins that I particularly had to watch out for. I grew up thinking that artists were homeless people.
Oh no.
A teacher who shipwrecked my confidence was my intro to psych TA. I was told that my ideas were fun now, but later I would need drugs and therapy. I believed this teacher because he was a good looking British man who wore glasses. The mentor who gave me a good role model was the janitor whose office had paintings of all the art students that quit the school. When people say that I have talent, I think they want to sleep with me. The thing that I am suspicious is that I'm any good at anything at all. I just can't believe that I won last year's Pulitzer Prize in short fiction.
Oh.
If I believe that I am really talented, then I am mad as hell at mom and dad and Todd Norton and my son and myself.
Oh man.
That's something really good to work from there. Like if this is your answers, you've just figured out all your trauma.
Shit, dude. Shit. That is a cool story. Like, I mean, you made a really cool character.
I made a very generic character.
You did, but there's enough there that, like,
Yeah, no, there's totally.
you threw some curveballs that made it really interesting.
Yes.
You know, the TA, and then, you know, her aunt, Julia Cameron. That was pretty good.
I think it was pretty good. I had a good time with doing that one.
Nice.
Okay, how are you going to follow it up, Renee?
I mean, I could read mine. It's not as fun as yours. It also wouldn't fit. Like some of the stuff I was like stumped. I'm like, I don't know what to say. And everything is so complicated in my life. To me, everyone's life is complicated. So it was very hard for me to reduce things down into like these little bite-sized words. Like making shit up and making it kind of cliche like you did, even though there was some fun bits in there that made it like kind of rounded out. That's easier than actually doing it for real.
Especially if you don't fit it. I think that's the problem is like, she's implying here that your father made you feel bad. Your mother made you feel bad in this way.
Yes.
You had a mentor that actually made you feel good. And then you had some bad experiences in school and you had some bad ideas about what it is to art. I mean, like she's asking for a particular reader to read this book and fill this thing out.
She's asking for someone that agrees with everything she says so that and then they can fill this out. It'll work for them. But we're not her. But she doesn't understand that. She has like zero reader awareness skills
Yeah.
to like understand what her reader needs.
Were there any ones that actually you were able to fill out on this? Let's skip the ones that didn't work for you at all.
Let me show you what happened. As a kid, my dad thought my art was a waste of time. That made me feel like he was controlling me. I remember one time when he said most writers will just publish online anyway. School didn't matter. I felt very stubborn and disrespected about that. I never forgot it.
Let's back up just one moment. So that whole bit that you just did was the first 3 lines that you managed to squeeze that many words into those tiny little blank spaces.
I had to.
Yeah,
so complicated. My life is not a simple like adjective.
Your mother now.
Right. As a kid, my mother taught me that my dreaming was not really an issue because my reality was at the whim of her daydreams. I remember she'd tell me to snap out of getting an education or wanting to get an education by reminding me that I was dumb. The person I remember who believed in me was my friend Jason. I remember one time he read my poems. I felt that was worth someone's time and seen. I never forgot it. The thing that ruined my chance to be an artist, like what a loaded freaking statement. The damage from my severe anxiety. The negative lesson I got from that, which wasn't logical, but I still believe, is that I can't move on. It's too dangerous to put myself out there and be an artist. When I was little, I learned that existing and wanting respect were big sins that I particularly had to watch out for. I grew up thinking artists were flaky, yet dangerous people. Okay, anyway, it's not working. I even wrote, the mentor who gave me a good role model was, I don't know, whatever. Fell apart. I couldn't keep going, and I had to change everything so that I could actually make anything fit.
Yeah, and this is like...
She wrote a rant and then deleted words and then put it in her book for us to fill out.
That very well might be. Yeah. that might be. But like she wants the idea that you're doing stuff. She puts something like this in so you can fill in some words.
Yeah,
You know, they don't fit.
this is not workshopped. I swear to God, nobody else read this. Her editor, I don't know who they are. They need to update it. They need to fix stuff. Yeah, there's no typos. Yeah, there's no grammatical errors. There needs to be some serious changes, you'd think. But then I think, well, she married Martin Scorsese, so I guess that was her way of getting published. I don't know how this book got published. And that's a lesson for you, dear listener. Bad shit gets published. So it
Yeah.
doesn't matter. Go for it. I'm not saying to write bad art. I'm just saying, like, if bad stuff can get published and you're probably a good writer or artist or whatever you do it because it's probably way better than Julia Cameron's Artist Way.
So there's a bit on affirmations that I'm just saying we skip unless you really want to.
They were dumb affirmations. I don't even.
Then I'd like to make one point about the tasks for this.
Okay.
This is my final little rant, which is I'm looking through the steps of all the stuff she's suggesting, and we've done all these things before. This is a rehash of earlier tasks. There's nothing new here. There's about writing down your dream. There's about, making a color chart. There's about making a list of what you're going to do today and tomorrow. There's like, if I had a better childhood, I would have done this. She rewrote the exact same exercises as some like on week 4, week 5, or sometime there. Like at this point, she's assuming that a person has forgotten what came before, so they need to repeat the
Gonna get different
exercises,
answers.
or
Yeah.
at this point they're skipping the tasks anyway, so why bother? I don't know.
I did like number 4 though.
List 5 things that you're not allowed to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like she's done that before.
I know, but like it made me feel better doing that one. I wrote get out of the country. But that's all I wrote. These activities are not helpful. They're not great. They need to be revised.
They were so the first time we did them, but to put them at this point in the book, like, wouldn't it be better to like have you fill out your own form of what you were going to work on, break your project down, something like
that
that?
would be nice. And in a tiny, tiny way, it kind of does. She says, in the world we inhabit now, what action can you take this year to move you closer, i.e., to your goal? What action can you take this month, this week, this day, right now? That's good. You're making a planner, right? You're writing down lists and breaking them down into smaller chunks, putting you in action for right now.
Yeah, it's one step of this goal search task that you're supposed to go through.
Yeah, I know. Listen, we're at page 149. We're about to do week 9. We're almost done. Nobody does these activities. I think we have read this book more thoroughly than 99% of the people who buy it. Okay. No one's reading these activities. No one's doing these activities. Maybe they are. I've never heard of them. The only thing I've ever heard is morning pages. You go online and that's all you'll hear about this book is morning pages. Other than that, I don't hear anything else.
Well, if you are following along with our podcast while you work through this book, just be aware that you don't have to bother looking at the tasks because you've already done them.
Right. The homework has already been completed months ago.
They aren't going to work now.
I agree. And if you are actually working through this book, or you've done this book, whatever, can you email us and like tell us how it went? Like, are we alone here? Are we just like mean people being mean to Julia Cameron?
Well, everybody else out there is getting on their artist way and loving it. I don't know.
Well, people are doing morning pages all the time. You know that you go to your Shut Up and Write and they do them. So
thank you all for listening. We actually seem to have a growing number of people that really just enjoy hearing us rant about this book. So fantastic.
Yeah, for all you new listeners who are like binging our episodes, hello, welcome.
And we'll see if we can get the next one out a little bit faster than we got this last one. It's been rough.
Anyway.
Bye.
Bye. Words to Write By is produced by Renee Nelson and Kim Smuda-Otto. Our theme music is Roll Back the Carpet by Cool Cat Music. Have a great day.
Oh, that's right. Getting the hell away from this book. I'm gonna burn it. Okay. No, never mind. I do not support burning books. I do not.